And to think the analytic nerds doubted my boy Brandon Bean. He's having a legacy performance if I've ever seen it, where, people were doubting him because he hasn't made any good trades in forever, or signed anybody good in forever, or drafted anybody good in forever. But, don't you feel stupid now that they traded a high value pick, number 60 overall, for DJ Moore, a wide receiver that's 29? Obviously a great age to get a wide receiver. Sure, the last time he got 50% of the league leading targets, he was 39th out of 44 in yards per route run. And that was not this past season, it was the year before that, because this year he didn't even get 50% of those targets. And, sure, Stefon Diggs was basically that same age and much better when you traded him for less. But, years from now, they knew he was going to become just a total bad dude. So, of course, it made sense. Obviously, DJ Moore, horrendous value. I give it an easy F for the Bills. Don't even got to think about that one. DJ Moore, if this is like 5 years ago, dude has a short shelf life inexplicably, where he was only good for, like the heating up years of most people's career. He's no longer really much of anything. So, trade away a good asset. I respect it. It's them acknowledging they want to draft at anybody good to begin with. So at least you get a fine number two receiver potentially out of this one. But the issue here is, he's old and he's expensive compared to that draft pick, and he's not really good. So that's really bad. But don't worry, they're also going to get rid of Teron Johnson. Fortunately enough for them, he's only, ever their at least third best defensive back. In the past 5 years, he's been in the top three out of the five defensive backs they put out there 5 years in a row. Pretty consistent, I would say. And, some of those years he's been number one or right there with number one at the very least. But to have a good, above average corner every year, and to say, no, we'll take $2 million in saving for him. Dude's 29 and a half. He's not old. This is really stupid process by them. A guy that if you can't, make it work with him, maybe you're asking too much of your DBs. I know McDermott asked too little of them because he just always played cover two, cover four, what have you. But this is really inexplicable. He's a good player. If you're cutting him, you better be saving like 10 million, because you need to replace him, and you're not going to replace him for 2 million. Not the worst move though, potentially, because Tyler Biadasz being cut from Washington, just a hilarious, despicable display on their part, I must say. 3 million saved. He's 28 and a half. That's ancient for offensive linemen, of course. You only see the Trent Williams play into their 40s, and the Andrew Whitworths. You only see them at tackle, the more demanding position. You never see that at center. No way Biadasz will be able to last. So, you have Tunsil and Cosme as your only reliable pass blockers on the line. I did say at the time, Tunsil trade looks cool, but you're going to lose a lot of money, and that line needs lots of people. Now they lost the guy that was good, so that's really sus. Houston, David Montgomery. If it wasn't clear, all three of these moves have been F. Now we move up to D minus. So we're really cooking now, boys. David Montgomery. You trade a fourth for him. 29-year-old running back. What could go wrong? 29 is obviously peak years for a position that average, running backs retire by 24. Obviously, he'll just never retire. He's different like that. I will say, a good player, a guy I like. So it's weird, saying I hate this move. But here's the thing. CJ Stroud is not good at football. So that puts you behind the eight ball to say, yeah, we're going to win right now. The defense definitely ready to win. But Stroud is holding you back a whole ton. And you also don't really have the best line to help him be less bad. So, how are you going to reconcile that you're not ready to win now because you don't have the quarterback and you're pushing your chips in a fair amount? Because a fourth for a running back, they better be a dang good running back. And Montgomery's good, but again, 29 years old, pretty wild stuff there. He's 19th in yards after contact per attempt. That is worrisome for a guy that's predicated on yards after contact and is never been that fast, so him losing a little bit of speed going to make him be more reliant on the yards after contact. So the only reason this isn't an F is because maybe they get a fine CJ Stroud next year to manage the game. They can win a playoff game 10-7 where the offense scores 3. They get a pick 6 the other way, of course. And, Montgomery is the reason they get that field goal. Maybe. But I just don't feel good about trying to win now when you don't even have a quarterback. So I don't like that from that standpoint. We go up to a D now because Tyler Higbee, I did this out of order, so forgive me, but Tyler Higbee, $4 million for a 2-year re-up. He's getting $4 million per year, I should say. So $8 million is going to be the average value on or the total value. It'd be nice if I could speak. So with that said, it's a very affordable deal. $4 million per year. He is 33. That's worrisome. Very affordable though. Good player to this day. The stat here is you already have 4 tight ends now. So why do you need to make sure you have this old ancient one? I don't think there's too much of a rationale there. It's cool to be able to be like, in this play we use this guy, and that one we use this guy, and we telegraph it to the team. But, at the end of the day, we are talking about you gave some of your minimal money to a position that you're strongest at. So I think that's very questionable. That's a D. But we go back to a D minus here because I don't know what I'm doing. And we have the Travion Sweat for Jermaine Johnson trade. I don't like this for the Titans one bit because Johnson's 2.5 years older. He's also 2 years further. I believe it's 2 years. Yes, 2 years further into his career. So that's not great. When you look at Johnson's peak year versus rookie Sweat, you see that Johnson barely edges him out, we'll say, because when it comes to pass rush win percentage, compared to edge versus compared to defensive tackle for Sweat, of course, to keep it fair, you have 8 better rank in your best performance for Johnson compared to Sweat, but 15 worse in run defense. So, pass rushing matters more than run defense, and it's a little bit weird with the different positions, of course. But at the end of the day, Sweat is a dominant run defender and has really shown some flashes as a pass rusher. Is younger, much cheaper for longer because Johnson is with that 5th-year option. So this is really bad in lots of ways. I give this a D minus. The only reason it wasn't an F is because at least Johnson is good. Probably. He wasn't really this year, but he was coming off the injury, so maybe you're like, hey, the best is yet to come. I don't feel good about that one bit, to be honest. I would much rather have Sweat straight up. So the fact you, factor in the age and such, really, really odd move. It seems like Saleh might be overstepping some boundaries there by saying, I like this guy when I was with the Jets. Let's bring him in. Weird for the Jets, I must say, because defensive tackle is already better for them than edge, probably, so you add another guy there, but the value is right. Titus Howard to the Browns. We're getting into the D territory, folks. This is just really bad, not dreadful. So Titus Howard going for number 135, signing $23 million per year for 2 years. Really, really weird stuff there because he's going to be signed to 32 years age season. That is not great for a team that is not anywhere close. If you couldn't tell, the Browns are perpetually not close, but even particularly so right about now for their standards, even. So you're putting a lot of money in there for a guy that, he's been above average 2 out of his 7 years in his career, according to PFF. You just let go of Bitonio for, being old. So why are you saying, well, we're going to trust you when you're old and you haven't really been good over Bitonio, who's been good here, and also we're going to trade a pick for you? So the only reason it's not, the F is because they lost their entire offensive line. It gives them a little bit of stability, but at the end of the day, you're not going to build an offensive line with one guy. So giving up any value when you're this young of a team in lots of key areas and just really not ready to win is really not good process, and especially giving up all that money for a guy that's not even much of anything. Speaking of money, though, Rashawn Gary cut for only $11 million. Really wonky, I must say. 28 and a half years old, not old, and he's a good player. He's a premier edge too. He's a stout run defender. He's a good pass rusher. I think the telling thing here is that not Leighton Vander Esch, it's going back a little bit, Lucas Van Ness and Kingsley, they combined as edge rushers to be roughly the total snaps that Rashawn Gary was. It was closer when you combine them than just Kingsley to Gary, so I don't love banking on those two guys really figuring it out. Gary was, outperforming them in most senses, where, LVN is a better pass rusher in a win percent rate, but he was very limited. And, the year before that, he was just dreadful. So this team is ready to win now. I don't really think you need to be getting rid of a guy that's in his prime that's still really good. I think, the money is nice. $11 million is substantial, but, are you really trusting a premier position such as edge to be just, figured out? I wouldn't do that. So Javonte Williams now to Dallas is reasonable value in a sense, where it's $8 million per year for 3 years. He's going to be signed through he's 28, though. And yards after contact, 3.6 this year, amazing. 22 to 24 the years. He averaged at his best was 2.7. That's not anywhere near, that's a whole yard less, basically. And the reason I say including those years is because the 1 year I think it was 23 when he was hurt, he played a little bit, didn't play 50% of the snaps anywhere near that, and he had higher numbers, so I don't include that. I'm looking for at least half the season to get some sort of idea, so I don't like banking on a guy that's at a position that, retires so early. He's already been hurt, and this could just very well be a flash in the pan. So I don't like that. It seems short-sighted from Dallas, which, stop me if you've heard that one before, but, that's not great. Little better, though, probably than Daniel Jones to Indy on that $38 million deal for the year. 28 and a half. He could be figuring it out, but we all know Kyler's available. And in 2024, when Kyler last played any substantial amount of games, he had Daniel Jones, his quarterback rating this year, but he had a plus 10 PFF grade. I think that's pretty telling. We can go back and forth on the legitimacy of some of PFF stats, but when you're talking about that big of a difference, there's probably something there. And then quarterback rating, that's pretty, quantitative and balanced. So the fact that it's even and, Kyler didn't have anywhere near the supporting cast that Jones did this past year, and Jones, this is far and away his best year, which was, again, only 13 games, too, so it's like lots of reason to be not jazzed about that. I know it's the 1 year, so it's a little bit, whatever, but this team's pretty darn good. You should be trying to win right away. And, Jones was rough at the end of the year, so another thing that makes you question. Taylor Decker being cut by Detroit, I give a D as well. 12 million saved, good stuff, but only 31 and a half at a position that lasts pretty long. And the past 2 years he's ranked 31 and 22 out of 58 both years for PFF in tackles that played 50% of the snaps or more. So that's a pretty good baseline. You're talking about Jared Goff, getting every name imaginable mixed up today, but Jared Goff, little known secret about him, only every football fan ever knows, is that he needs a pretty darn good supporting cast to be at his best. So, you're going a little bit off the rails here, Detroit. You're not really stable at line, which is particularly important for an immobile quarterback like Goff. And, you're adding some chaos there. Maybe something can be, situated to band-aid it, but you got rid of Glasgow as well. There's a lot of volatility at hand there, and I don't like taking risk on the line with Goff as the quarterback, unless maybe you get a major upgrade at wide receiver in the process, which doesn't seem likely. So the final one is a D+, the best you're going to see here. It's the last one. Bobby Okereke cut from the Giants. Weird to say not good because the Giants don't seem like they're ready to win. So 29-and-a-half-year-old linebacker being cut, saving $9 million, just came off a rough year. We're at a 56 PFF grade. Understandable, but the thing is, it doesn't seem in line with where they are in all actuality, where you just bring in Harbaugh, who is a low ceiling, high floor coach, and you're saying, hey, we have Jackson Dart on this rookie deal. Scattaboo looked great when he was healthy. You got your number one receiver and Neighbors coming back. You got a great pick. You got lots of things going your way. You've spent hundreds of millions on a defensive line. Why are you getting rid of your only legitimate linebacker is my question, at a position where, it does matter a lot if you have a star guy, but it also matters a lot that you don't have any scrubs. So this does not add up to me. I don't bank on the Giants being good this upcoming year. Maybe not even the year after that. But we are getting a little bit dangerous here where, Dart is going to supply a lot of value on this contract where he's not making a lot of money more than likely. He should be bringing in some value there. So why not give yourself some chance to potentially be one of those dark horse teams where you're like, oh, wow, they weren't, like the Patriots of this year where, there was stuff to like, but they seem way ahead of schedule. That's kind of how you want to approach this, I think, if you're the Giants, where, you at least give yourself some opportunities where it's dangerous to have multiple, timelines going. But I think in the case of the Giants, where you do have this lot of young talent on offense that could be very interesting, why not have some semblance of a defense to work with? So I'm attacking all of these moves that are notable. I'm starting with the worst ones first because you can lose an offseason right away, pretty much. You can't really win it, so it's going to be a little bit more, impactful in that sense. And also, I just noticed there were a lot of goofy moves, to be completely honest. So make sure you're subscribed to see more reaction to moves. There'll be some positivity, believe it or not. There's been a couple good moves as well, so it's not all bad. But make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you have the notification bell on. If you're doing the podcast, make sure you follow and rate 5 stars, preferably. Prefer that to the 1 star. So make sure you're followed, whatever medium you are. Make sure you like. And make sure you're kind to others, but also yourself. Thank you for watching.